Wyoming Territory, May 1883. The wind howled over the empty fields outside of Casper as thunder rolled in the far distance. But no storm could match the one tearing inside Fiona Atwell's chest. She tucked her swollen body tighter into the pile of hay in the corner of the abandoned barn, cradling her stomach with trembling fingers. Her boots were soaked through, her dress caked in dust and dried sweat. The child inside her kicked once, then was still. She had not eaten in 2 days. The barn creaked as the wind pressed against the wooden slats, and the scent of rain rode in through the gaps. Fiona's eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion dragging her under. She did not hear the approaching horse. She did not hear the boots crunch dry straw. But she felt the warmth of something soft being laid across her shoulders. Her eyes snapped open. A blanket, thick, smelled of horse and tobacco. She blinked up into the face of a man kneeling beside her. His hat was pulled low, but the flicker of the lantern he held showed a strong jaw, sun-darkened skin, and eyes that searched her face like he was trying to understand something. In his other hand, he held out a cloth-wrapped bundle. "Bread," he said softly. "Still warm. Take it." Fiona's lips trembled. "Why?" He shrugged. "Because you look like you need it more than I do." She stared at him, then slowly pushed herself upright. Her back ached. Her ribs felt like they were being pulled apart. But she reached for the bread. Her fingers brushed his, and he did not flinch from her dirt-caked hands. "Thank you," she whispered, voice hoarse. He sat down cross-legged in the straw, setting the lantern between them. "Name's Silas Granger," he said. "I was riding back from town. Saw the light. Figured no one should be sleepin' out here alone." Fiona chewed slowly, eyes still on him. "Fiona Atwell," she said after a moment. "Used to be Fiona Atwell, I guess." His brow furrowed. "Where's your people?" "Gone," she said simply. "My husband died last fall in a rail accident outside Cheyenne. I had nothing left. Been trying to get west to find work. Somewhere quiet. I did not make it far." Silas nodded once, like he understood that kind of loss. "You have someone waitin' for you?" She shook her head. "No one." He looked at her belly, then back to her face. "How far along?" 7 months, she said. "I think." Silas leaned forward, pulling a canteen from his saddlebag and setting it beside her. "There's a ranch about 8 miles west. Belongs to me. It is not much, but it is warm and the roof does not leak. You should not be out here alone." Fiona stiffened. "I am not." "I know," he said gently. "I am not trying to fix you. Just offerin' a dry bed and something better than stale bread." She blinked. A drop of water slid down her cheek. She was not sure if it was from the roof or her own eyes. "I do not take charity," she said, voice small. Silas gave a half-smile, slow and quiet. "Then do not. Come work the garden or feed the hens. I do not need a handout either. Just figured maybe you could use a little kindness." Fiona looked at the blanket wrapped around her. It was thick and smelled like safety. She looked at the bread half-eaten in her lap. Then she looked at the man across from her, sitting in straw and shadow like he had nowhere else he wanted to be. "Okay," she said finally. His eyes softened. "Can you ride?" She hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, he stood, offering her his hand. She took it, and he pulled her to her feet with care. She swayed, and his arm came around her waist, steadying her. Not possessive, just strong and sure. They walked out into the night together. His horse stood patiently nearby. Silas helped Fiona up first, then climbed behind her, keeping his arms gentle around her middle. The wind had eased. The night air smelled of sage and rain. And for the first time in weeks, Fiona felt like maybe she was not running anymore. Maybe she was being led somewhere instead. The sun hadn't yet cleared the hills when Silas led his mare through the split log gate. The ranch sat in a shallow valley, rimmed in cottonwoods that rustled quietly in the morning hush. The house was one story, squared and worn but solid. Smoke curled from the chimney. The corral held 2 geldings and a swaybacked mule nosing at the empty trough. A chicken darted out from under the porch. Fiona shifted behind him, her breath shallow against his back. She hadn't spoken once on the ride, but her arms had tightened around him when they crossed the creek, and she hadn't let go since. He stopped the horse beside the porch and swung down. She hesitated, then offered her hand. He took it, steadying her as she slid off. Her boots hit the ground with a thud, and she winced, hand pressing to her side. "There's a chair inside," he said, "close to the fire." She nodded once. Her eyes scanned the land around them, then the house, then him. She didn't ask questions, just followed. Inside, the floor creaked under her steps. The hearth glowed with banked embers, and a dented kettle hung from the hook above it. Silas nodded toward the rocker. She sat carefully, folding her hands in her lap. The firelight touched the curve of her cheek, pale beneath days of grit. "I'll heat water," he said, pulling off his gloves and setting them on the shelf by the door. "You can wash. There's a basin and soap. Ain't got much, but it's clean." She met his eyes. "I'd be grateful." He poured water into the kettle and set it back to heat, then stepped out, leaving the door cracked. When he returned, she stood by the hearth, hair damp and braided back, her skin scrubbed raw. She wore the same dress, but it hung differently now, less stiff with dust. Her eyes flicked to him, then back to the fire. "I'll cook," he said. "You all right with eggs?" "I can do it," she said, stepping forward. "You need rest," he answered. "Sit. I know my way around a skillet." She didn't argue. He cracked eggs into the pan, added salt, and listened to the quiet sizzle as she settled again into the rocker. The chickens outside clucked, and the wind rattled the shutters once, then stilled. "My husband never cooked," she said after a while. "Said it weren't a man's place." Silas lifted the pan from the fire and scooped the eggs onto a tin plate. He handed it to her, then sat on the stool across. "I figure if a man's hungry, he ought to know how to feed himself." She took a bite, chewing slowly. "You always lived out here?" "Bought it 5 years back. Worked cattle before that, near Rawlins. Got tired of men who drank more than they worked." She studied him. "You live alone?" He nodded. "Had a brother. Died in the blizzard 2 winters ago. After that, just kept to myself." She looked down. "I'm sorry." "So am I." She didn't speak again until the plate was nearly empty. Then, "You said I could help with the hens." He met her eyes. "You don't have to prove anything. I want to earn my place here." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You already have." Fiona stared at the fire, lashes low. Her voice came quiet. "I don't know what comes next." "You don't have to," he said. "Not today." Silas stood and took the plate from her lap, his fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away. He turned, washed the tin in the pump basin, and set it to dry. When he looked back, she'd fallen asleep in the rocker, her hands folded over her belly. The light caught the edge of her face, softening the lines carved by long days and longer nights. He pulled the blanket from the hook near the door and laid it gently across her legs. Then he sat by the hearth and watched the fire, listening to her breathe. Fiona stood at the edge of the chicken shed, sleeves rolled to her elbows, straw clinging to her skirt. The hens scattered at her feet, clucking in disapproval as she bent to scatter feed from a dented tin bucket. Her back ached more than usual, the weight of the child lower now, pulling her forward. She paused, pressing a hand beneath her ribs, and squinted toward the hills where the sun had begun its slow rise. Behind her, boots scuffed the dirt. She turned. "I fixed the west fence line," Silas said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Found a break near the gully. Might have been elk. Or something meaner." She nodded, brushing a wisp of hair from her cheek. "Do they wander this far down?" "Sometimes," he said. "You see tracks, call me. Don't go out alone." "I'm not helpless." "I didn't say you were." She met his eyes, steady and unflinching. He didn't look away. A crow called from the cottonwoods, sharp and sudden. Fiona shifted her weight, easing the pressure on her spine. "I've been thinking," she said. "If you've got spare cloth, I can start sewing. Baby will need swaddles. You'll need new shirts before long." "I've got some muslin stored," he said. "Wasn't sure what I'd do with it." "You're welcome to it." He turned toward the house, then paused. "There's a box under the bed. My mother's things. She sewed. Might be patterns in there." As the door closed behind him, Fiona looked down at her hand, fingers still curled around the handle of the feed scoop. It had been some time since anyone spoke of a mother without sorrow or distance. She dumped the rest of the grain and made her way across the yard, her steps slow but sure. Inside, she knelt beside the bed, lifting the cedar box with care. The lid creaked open to reveal a neat stack of folded fabric, a tin of buttons worn smooth with use, and spools of thread browned with age. Beneath them, a small leather-bound book, pages filled with neat, looping script, recipes, hand-mending tips, and faint pencil sketches of shirts, dresses, infant bonnets. She traced one sketch with her thumb, then closed the book and stood. That evening, as the sky turned the color of split peaches, Fiona sat on the porch with a strip of linen stretched across her lap. Her needle moved in quiet rhythm. Silas stepped out, wiping his hands on a towel, sleeves damp from scrubbing out the water trough. "You sew like you were born to it," he said. "My mother taught me," she replied. "Didn't have much, but she made sure we had what we needed. She could mend anything. Tore her apron once and had it stitched back before supper." "You miss her." "I try not to. Some memories hurt more than they help." Silas sat on the top step, stretching his legs. "What if the baby's a girl? Then I'll teach her every trick I know," Fiona said, tying off her thread. "And if it's a boy, he'll still learn to sew, just like you cook." He looked up at her, a slow grin pulling at his mouth. "Suppose that's fair." She glanced down at her belly. "It won't be long now. I can feel the way everything's shifted. Lower, heavier." "You scared?" She considered that. "No, I've been scared. This feels like something else. Like turning a page." Silas leaned back on his elbows, gazing out across the fading fields. "You'll have what you need here. I'll make sure of that." She looked at him then, truly looked, his quiet steadiness, the way he made promises without fanfare, only the weight of truth behind them. "I believe you," she said. His eyes stayed on the horizon, but she didn't miss the way his shoulders eased, just slightly. The lantern inside flickered to life behind the window. A coyote howled somewhere far off, and the hens settled down for the night. Fiona set the cloth aside and folded her hands over her belly. For the first time since the earth fell out from under her life, she felt the ground again, solid and warm beneath her feet. Fiona woke to the sound of rain tapping the shingles, a slow, steady rhythm that matched the roll of her baby's heel beneath her ribs. A faint gray light filtered through the window panes. She sat up carefully, hand braced on the mattress, and eased her feet to the floor. Her breath caught as a cramp pulled low across her belly, brief, then gone. The child had begun to press downward, and the signs were becoming more certain by the day. In the kitchen, Silas was already bent over the stove, stirring a pot with quiet focus. His hair was damp near the collar, and steam clung to his sleeves. "You're up early," she said, her voice still thick with sleep. He glanced over, eyes soft. "Storm woke me. Figured hot oats might help take the chill off." She moved to the table, lowering herself into the chair he'd pulled out. "I think the baby's getting ready." He nodded once, slowly. "You want me to ride for the midwife?" "Not yet," she said. "She's still in Glenrock, and the trails washed something awful. I'll know when it's time." Silas ladled the oats into 2 bowls and set one in front of her. She took a bite, the warmth spreading through her chest. "Do you know how to deliver a child?" she asked after a long silence. "I've pulled calves in the dead of winter and helped a neighbor's wife once when the man got drunk and passed out before the doctor arrived." He looked at her, not flinching. "But I'd rather not be your first choice. You're the only one here." He gave a quiet sound, not quite a sigh. "Then I'll be ready." Later that morning, the rain let up, leaving the land slick and shining. Fiona stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in one of his old coats, and watched the clouds drift low over the hills. Her hands rested on her stomach, but her eyes were on the earth. Silas joined her with a tin cup of chicory. He handed it to her and leaned his shoulder against the porch post. "You ever think about raising a child on land like this?" she asked. "I've thought about a lot of things," he said. "Never thought I'd have the chance." She kept her gaze on the woods beyond the corral. "I grew up in a mining camp outside Laramie. Dirt floors, shallow roots. We moved whenever the vein dried up. I used to dream of a place that didn't shift beneath my feet every season. You've got it now." "Do I?" He turned toward her, voice low. "You've got me." Fiona looked at him then, long and clear. "It doesn't scare you? That I come with more than just myself." "I don't scare easy." She held his gaze. "You haven't asked what I want." "What do you want?" Her hand tightened around the tin. "I want to stay. I want this child to have something I never had. I want to wake up knowing the roof won't leak and the man beside me won't vanish come spring." "You'd have that here." "I'd need more than kindness, Silas." He stepped closer, just enough that she could feel the heat of his body beneath the coat. "You'd have more than kindness." She didn't answer, but she didn't look away. That night, she found him in the barn, hanging the bridles to dry along the wall. The air smelled of leather and damp hay. She stood in the doorway watching him work. "You planning to stay out here all night?" she asked. "Didn't want to wake you." "I wasn't sleeping." He turned. "Something wrong?" "No," she stepped inside, her boots careful on the boards. "Just didn't want to be alone." He crossed the space between them without a word and laid a hand gently on her back. She leaned into it, slow and sure, until her forehead rested against his chest. Neither of them spoke. The storm had passed, but the barn still held its hush. After a long while, she looked up. "I never thought I'd feel safe again." "You are," he said. "With me, you are." She didn't speak again, just reached for his hand and held it in both of hers. Outside, the wind moved through the grass, and inside the barn, 2 people stood still, as if time had finally settled. The pain came just before dawn, sharp and certain. Fiona gripped the edge of the mattress and breathed through it, her brow damp, teeth clenched against a cry. When it passed, she eased upright, one hand braced on her side, the other already reaching for the wool shawl draped over the footboard. She found Silas already stoking the stove, kneeling in his undershirt, sleeves rolled, eyes shadowed with worry before she even spoke. "It's time," she said. He stood, the poker still in his hand. "How close?" She waited, counted the space between the tightness in her belly and the next wave cresting through her. "Not long between." He nodded, already moving water on to boil, the chipped basin set beside clean linens, the old rocking chair pulled near the hearth. He didn't speak unless necessary, and when he touched her arm to guide her closer to the fire, his hand was cool and steady. The hours passed in a hush broken only by her breathing and the wood settling in the stove. Fiona labored on the floor, knees pressed into a folded quilt, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. Silas knelt behind her, sweat at his temples, sleeves soaked through, guiding her with quiet words when her strength faltered. When the child came, it was sudden and whole. A boy, red-faced and squalling, with fists curled tight and legs kicking against the air. Silas wrapped him in linen and passed him into her arms. She held him close, her cheek against his damp head, chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. Silas crouched beside her, his eyes on her face. "He's strong," he said. "He is," she whispered. Outside, snow had begun to fall thin, slow flakes drifting across the pasture, softening the sharp edges of the world. Later, with the baby asleep in the cradle Silas had repaired weeks before, Fiona sat beside the fire, her body aching but quiet now. She stitched slowly, mending one of Silas's shirts, though her hands trembled more than usual. "You never told me what your mother's name was," she said, eyes on the fabric. "Naomi," he replied. "She grew up near Fort Bridger, knew how to shoot better than my father. But she sang in the evenings, and she made everything feel lighter." Fiona tied off her thread. "I think I would have liked her. She would have liked you." He leaned back, boots crossed at the ankle, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Would have said I finally stopped running." She looked at him, her face gone soft with something she hadn't carried in years. "Were you?" "I think I was," he said. "Until you." The snow was still falling when he reached across the space between them and covered her hand with his. She didn't flinch from the touch. She turned it over and laced their fingers together, slow and sure. "You don't have to ask," she said. He tilted his head. "Don't have to ask what?" "To stay." Silas brought her hand to his lips, kissed it once, and rested their joined fingers on her knee. "Then I won't." The baby stirred in the cradle, let out one soft sigh, then settled again. Silas rose and stoked the fire, then returned to her side. She leaned against him, her head against his shoulder, watching the flames dance. They were married 2 weeks later beneath a sky washed clean by late snow. The preacher from Douglas came by wagon, and the hens clucked curiously at the gathering of neighbors' ranchers and wives. A schoolteacher from 3 valleys over, and a freckled boy who'd once helped Silas mend a wagon wheel. The vows were spoken plainly, hands joined beneath the bare cottonwoods, Fiona's dress taken in at the waist, the child wrapped against her chest in a sling she had sewn herself. They ate bread warm from the hearth, and beef stew served from a kettle that had belonged to Silas's mother. There was no music, but someone whistled a tune from the porch, and Fiona laughed when Silas tried to dance with her across the frozen yard, both of them slipping in the mud. That night, after the lanterns were out and the house gone quiet except for the baby's breathing, Fiona lay beneath the quilt, her palm against her husband's chest. "I never thought I'd find this," she said. "Neither did I. Do you think we'll be all right?" "I know we will." She smiled in the dark, the sound of his heartbeat beneath her fingers, the weight of his arm around her waist. The land outside slept beneath the snow, but inside, the warmth held. In spring, the child learned to sit upright, then to laugh. Fiona planted seeds in the back garden with earth beneath her nails and sun on her shoulders. Silas built a smokehouse near the shed and mended the front gate. The wind still came through the valley, but it no longer carried loneliness, only the sound of new life, and the quiet promise of something earned. They grew older but never apart, and in that quiet stretch of Wyoming, where sorrow had once taken root, love held fast.